had no way of knowing if there were one or two serial killers out there killing black men. By October 9, 1980, 6 African-American men had been found slain in the Buffalo area. Authorities were not certain that only one person was responsible. In just 3 weeks, the serial killings had split the local community along racial lines. District Attorney Edward Cosgrove led the investigation.
It's hard to even describe the community mind at that time. There were demands for action all over from the black community for the police to stop what was happening here. I had press conferences that were attended by the national press. Everybody descended upon Buffalo, and everybody wanted answers from me. I didn't have the answers.
The story made national headlines. A $100,000 reward was offered for information leading to the arrest and conviction of the .22 caliber killer. President Jimmy Carter took notice. With the wedge of civil rights violations dividing the Buffalo community, the president declared the investigation a federal case. Local lawmen now had the full resources of the FBI at their disposal. As federal agents began sifting through the collected information, another incident rocked upstate New York. On the night of October 10th, Colin Cole slept in Buffalo General Hospital. Cole was an inmate from a local jail, recuperating from a drug overdose. Just as visiting hours were coming to a close, a man walked down the hall to the 7th floor looking for Cole's room. The recovering addict gasped for breath as the man tightened the ligature. A nurse administering medication surprised the strangler. He fled, leaving Cole alive. The nurse alerted hospital security. But the call came too late. It was the 7th attack on a black man in just 3 weeks. No one knew for sure if the .22 caliber killer was responsible for this attack. Lieutenant Thomas Rowan and his team had little understanding of serial killers at the time.
Glimpsing into the mind of a serial killer is like twinkling your toes into the abyss of the very weird. You're never really sure what's there.
Local investigators needed someone who was more familiar with these types of offenders. They called upon John Douglas of the FBI Behavioral Sciences Unit to provide a profile of the .22 caliber killer. Through this process, Douglas would provide the team with insight to the killer's psychological behavior. Currently senior analyst of appnews.com, an online crime news website, Douglas spent 20 years pioneering the science of profiling.
A profile is designed to come up with the most probable offender. Its goal is to eliminate a lot of false leads. An attempt is being made as well to maybe refocus the investigation of law enforcement, or possibly reinforce the investigation by telling them that you're on the right track here.
Douglas was on the next plane to Buffalo. During the trip, he familiarized himself with the case files.
You have to walk in the shoes of both the subject and walk in the shoes of that victim to truly understand really what took place during that assault. I'm going to be asking myself the question, why this victim?
He confirmed what local investigators believed. The only connections among the 6 murder victims were their race and sex. They were black men who had been chosen by at least one killer as targets of opportunity. The strangled survivor, Colin Cole, was not a random victim since he'd been sought out in his hospital room. The profiler believed Cole's attacker was at the very least a racist copycat, not necessarily responsible for any of the murders. Douglas needed to probe further. He had to meticulously recreate each murder from the known evidence. Reviewing all 6 attacks, the profiler looked for behavioral characteristics that could be ascribed to just one offender.
When you look at serial killers, you look at patterns as well as signature. Signature is something that the offender does. It's kind of repetitive behavior, but behavior that the subject has to do. It's more of a ritual.
Douglas found the behavior from each of the 4 shootings to be similar. The .22 caliber killer had surprised random victims, fired quickly from close range, then bolted, leaving his prey before they were dead. The assassin's signature was a blitz style of attack. The cabbie murders didn't seem to fit that pattern. In those 2 cases, the killer had severely bludgeoned the victims, mutilated them, then dumped them far from where they were killed. The killer had spent a great deal of time with the bodies, even after death. To Douglas, this suggested 2 different killers.
There are different types of serial killer. There are the very personal types of serial killers and the impersonal style and type of serial killer. The personal type of an offender wants to look in the eyes of the victim, and they want to spend hours, if at all possible, with their victims, be in a position of total control and domination. That's what really is going to turn them on.
It appeared that cabbies were murdered by a personal type of serial killer. Those crimes demonstrated a rage and overkill that were not evident in the shootings. Douglas believed that the psychopathology of the .22 caliber killer left a seemingly different behavioral thumbprint.
The assassination style of serial killer are somewhere in an age group between 25 to 28 is when they first begin to surface. How they can be described as really more of an asocial type of personality, not so much antisocial, but asocial, keeping to themselves. They generally become obsessed with weapons. They may be found with having multiple weapons as well. The person would probably, if he was in the military, I said that he'd have difficulty in any branch of the service, and would probably, at some point, would even receive a discharge.
To the profiler, it looked as if Western New York may have had 2 distinct serial killers on the loose. Douglas reported his findings to local investigators. Because the technique of profiling was new in 1980, a few had doubts about its reliability.
Some people look at this as this is some type of voodoo or witchcraft. I mean, how are you able to determine, for example, age of the offender? And actually, it's pretty easy once you do enough of these cases.
From his experience with similar cases, the profiler added that the .22 caliber killer would most likely be an avid hunter, having a history of menial jobs. Douglas stressed that it was up to the local team to find or eliminate suspects based on his profile.
This is a good tool, but really it's you. You're the people up there, you police, you're going to solve the case. I'm not going to solve the case. To me, this is the easy part. I'm just going to try to help you maybe refocus the case, give you an idea, paint a portrait of the offender, but really you're the one who's going to knock on the doors and wear out the leather soles and come up with the suspect.
A national all-points bulletin of the .22 caliber killer's profile was received by law enforcement agencies around the country. Investigators had a description, but still had no name. Late in 1980, the FBI and local police searched for leads in the unsolved murders of 6 black men from Western New York. Hoping to focus the massive investigation, an FBI profiler was called in to assess connections between the cases. He believed it was possible that 2 distinct racist killers were responsible. 2,000 suspects were interrogated, but police made no arrests. Buffalo wasn't the only city in New York State facing terror in the streets. 400 miles southeast, in New York City, a knife-wielding attacker was terrorizing Midtown. Commuter Ivan Frazier was the victim of a subway knifing 3 days before Christmas. Blocking the attack with his arm, he survived and reported the assault to the NYPD. At 1:25 in the afternoon, Ivan Frazier noticed another rider talking with an attractive woman. To Frazier, it appeared the man was trying to pick her up. The woman seemed annoyed. He got up to exit the next step. Frazier returned to his article. Without warning, the man across the aisle slashed Frazier in the forearm and wrist, then dashed away. He described the assailant as a white man in his early 30s, with brown hair, wearing a blue jacket. 2 hours later, 3:30 in the afternoon, 19-year-old Luis Rodriguez was walking on the west side of Midtown Manhattan when he was jumped by a white man demanding his wallet. Rodriguez fought off the initial blow, but the attacker lunged at him again, stabbing him twice in the chest. Before he died, Rodriguez described him to police as a white man with brown hair, wearing a blue jacket. 3 hours after Rodriguez, Antoine Davis was found stabbed to death in front of a Midtown bank. By 10:35 p.m., Richard Renner died in front of a hotel on 49th Street. He was also stabbed. By 11 p.m., the killer was back in the subway looking for another victim. He spotted Carl Ramsey. In the dim light, no one noticed the knife. Bleeding severely, Ramsey crawled out of the subway. By midnight, he was dead. In less than 24 hours, 4 black men were dead. The New York City press dubbed the killer the Midtown Slasher. The rash of attacks on black men in Manhattan had many similarities to the profile of the .22 caliber killer. New York City investigators called on John Douglas to provide a profile of the slasher.
Because I did an independent analysis, when I started to paint a portrait of that person, goodness, it was just like the Buffalo, New York case as well. We have a subject here approaching his victims, blitz style of attack.
There was one major difference. The Midtown Slasher used a knife. The .22 caliber killer used a rifle.
Now, we don't have the 22 weapon, but maybe the reason for that is we don't have a 22 weapon because now we're dealing in areas that are very highly populated. If you have a 22 weapon, the sound of this would draw attention to himself.
Douglas determined that the signature behavior was identical. With a gun or a knife, the assailant attacked in the same way. By late December, District Attorney Cosgrove realized something else that bolstered the profiler's conclusion.
During that period of time, there had not been any assaults here in the city of Buffalo. It was quiet with respect to the activity of this .22 caliber assailant.
By the early weeks of 1981, the killer seemed to have disappeared. In January of 1981, the FBI and local investigators searched for the .22 caliber killer, wanted for the murders of at least 8 black men in New York City and Buffalo. Following months of investigation, Buffalo Detective John Regan and his team were unable to come up with the name of a viable suspect.
The case is in limbo and everybody is frustrated. They don't know where to go. We don't have a name. We have no idea. Then out of the blue, there's a call made to the Buffalo Police Department homicide.
An officer from the Army's Criminal Investigative Division in Fort Benning, Georgia, made the call. The Army was holding a 25-year-old Private Joseph Christopher on charges of assaulting a fellow soldier. On January 13, 1981, Private Christopher attempted to stab an African-American enlistee. While he was in custody, Christopher tried to castrate himself with a razor. and Captain Dorothy Anderson began administering medical aid to the prisoner. He began muttering that he'd killed black men in the New York and Buffalo area. He didn't know the exact number of his victims. It was just something he had to do. Troubled by his story, Anderson reported it to the Army's Criminal Investigative Division. She told the CID officer of Christopher's ramblings. The CID officer remembered receiving an APB on the New York killings. He called the Buffalo Police Homicide Division as instructed by the teletype. For District Attorney Cosgrove, this explained why the killings had stopped in New York State.
From the time of our discovery of the second cab driver's gruesome death until almost Christmas of 1980, when we had the killings, the 4 killings in New York City, there had been a cessation of attacks, and apparently that was when Joseph Christopher was in the Army down in Georgia, as we later found out.
The FBI and the police finally had a name: Joseph Gerard Christopher. Agent Mrazowitz and his team compared Joseph Christopher's background to the .22 caliber killer profile.
It was pretty accurate. She described him as a white male, but early 30s, a loner. Possibly, if he were in the military, he would be hospitalized. He would be seeking psychiatric care. Prior to being in the military, he would have had menial type labor. As soon as you had the name Joseph Gerard Christopher, you knew that profile matched.
Investigators tracked down several friends and acquaintances of Christopher's. David Robinson had been a friend of the suspect for over a decade. They often shot target practice and went deer hunting together at Christopher's family cabin. He also told investigators that Christopher had a gun collection that his father had left him when he died. The collection included a .22 Ruger rifle, but Robinson never saw one that was cut down. Investigators secured a search warrant for Christopher's last known residence. They arrived at his mother's house in Buffalo, New York on April 22, 1981.
Fuck what I'm called for. Be civilized.
In Christopher's bedroom, FBI agents recovered metal-rimmed glasses and khaki clothing that matched witness accounts of the perpetrator's apparel.
No.
The FBI profile drawn up by John Douglas predicted the .22 caliber killer would be fascinated by guns and the military. The Christopher basement was an underground firearm range. Agents found the inherited gun collection and portions of a sawed-off gun barrel. Among the paraphernalia, forensic specialists found boxes of .22 ammunition, a misfired .22 caliber cartridge, along with a rotary magazine. Ballistic specialist Thomas Rowan believed the evidence was significant.
Finding the rotary magazine for the 10-22 Ruger was an important feature that supported a widely held theory throughout the investigation that the shooter specifically picked something so he could keep the profile of the weapon low enough to fit inside of a paper bag when he conducted these executions of these men in the street.
The rotary magazine enabled Christopher to have a full load of ammunition and allowed the sawed-off weapon to remain concealed in a bag without having to reload. A second warrant allowed investigators to search the family cabin in Ellington, New York. Detectives dug in the spot where Robinson told them he and Christopher shot rifles. The excavation yielded 2 shells, marred with a unique firing pin mark. The same marking was on the shells collected at the crime scenes. Firearm specialists of the Erie County Department of Central Police Services examined the shell casings that were found at the Christopher home and cabin. They compared them to the casings found at the first 4 crime scenes. They concluded that the shells were all fired from the same gun. With this match, Assistant District Attorney John DeFranks was able to get an indictment from a grand jury.
The casings spoke for themselves. Put the casing under the microscope, you had your evidence. It couldn't be altered or tainted.
Joseph Christopher was extradited from Georgia and returned to Buffalo, New York to stand trial. Officers fitted Christopher with a ski mask to prevent witnesses from identifying him through the media.
We put a mask on him for purposes of preventing potential witnesses from observing his face on the television and then basing their identification on that rather than upon their own recollection.
One of those key witnesses was Madonna Gorney. She had seen the .22 caliber killer the first night he struck in the parking lot of the supermarket. On May 5th, 1981, she confronted Joseph Christopher in a lineup.
It was a little scary. I was concerned with the possibility of being actually anyone in the lineup being able to see us who were there to identify someone in the lineup.
Gorney was protected by the bright lights that shone in the eyes of the subjects. She was able to identify Christopher in 2 different lineups. Agents and local police felt certain that they had the .22 caliber killer. Questions of Christopher's mental competency delayed the trial. In December 1981, a judge pronounced Joseph Christopher mentally incompetent to stand trial. He was committed to the Mid-Hudson State Psychiatric Center where he received treatment. On February 17, 1982, Christopher was deemed fit for prosecution. The trial began on April 6, 1982. The community watched every step the prosecution took.
The media reported this entire case on a day-to-day basis, sometimes on a minute-by-minute basis. It was good for the community because they wanted answers, they wanted information. And it was good for us because it began to convince the community that we had the right individual and that their fears could be somewhat allayed.
The state jury found Joseph Christopher guilty for the murders of Glenn Dunn, Harold Green, and Emmanuel Thomas. He was sentenced to 60 years to life in prison. Prosecutors never tried him for the Manhattan knifings. One question still remained. Was Christopher also the taxicab slasher? Though the FBI profile excluded Christopher as the suspect, he later revealed details of the cab driver's wounds that only the killer could have known.
We wanted to make sure here in Buffalo and Erie County that we satisfied the community's need for professionalism, thoroughness, competence, and all the other things that the community expects of its policemen and prosecutors. And we were able to satisfy that need because we were successful.
Through science and good detective work, Joseph Christopher would never be free to kill again. He spent the rest of his life behind bars until his death, curiously from a rare form of male breast cancer at the age of 37. Deep in the hills of Arkansas, an army of extremists plot to overturn the U.S. government. They spread a doctrine of hate, murder, and genocide. Launched death raids on churches and synagogues, bombed public utilities, and gunned down a state trooper. Federal agents must dismantle the radical renegades without inciting a bloody war.
In 1984, a tragic murder led agents into the frightening world of domestic terrorism. Law enforcement vowed to dismantle the violent faction that claimed responsibility. I'm Jim Kallstrom, former head of the FBI's New York office. The radical group pursued a doctrine of racial cleansing, an attack on basic American freedoms. The FBI's quest for justice escalated into a brutal showdown, pitting agents against terrorists, fueled by hate.
June 1984, Sevier County, Arkansas, a rural area along the Oklahoma border. Winona Bryant drives south on U.S. Highway 71. Winona is a teacher at a local high school. She's traveling with her children and her nephew to meet her husband for lunch. He is Lewis Bryant, an Arkansas state trooper. He patrols this stretch of highway. Along the way, Winona spots a police cruiser on the side of the road. She recognizes the ID number.
That's Dad's car.
Lewis is nowhere in sight. Something's wrong. Winona tells the children to stay in the car. Then she sees him, covered with blood. Winona struggles to stay calm as she uses the police radio to call for help.
Officer down! Officer down! Please, somebody! Officer down! Somebody!
She tells the dispatcher that Lewis is unconscious. It looks like he's been shot.
Just get somebody here! He's been shot!
The Arkansas State Police dispatcher alerts all police frequencies that an officer is down.
Interstate 71 North.
Passing motorists stop to help. Winona can feel a faint heartbeat, but her husband isn't breathing. She administers CPR until county authorities arrive. Paramedics rush Bryant to a nearby hospital, where he is pronounced dead. Trooper Lewis Bryant was a respected veteran of the Arkansas State Police. He leaves behind his wife, Winona, and their 2 children. Within minutes of the shooting, the DeQueen, Arkansas Sheriff's Department receives a frantic call. A driver on Highway 71 reports seeing a brown and white van leaving the scene. It was pulling a homemade trailer. Police in Broken Bow, Oklahoma spot the van heading west. The driver refuses to stop, but police force him to the side of the road. As officers converge on the van, the driver pulls out a rifle and starts shooting. Police strike the suspect in the shoulder. He pulls out a .45 caliber pistol and continues firing. Officers hit him 4 more times, finally forcing him down. Police search the wounded suspect and find a driver's license identifying him as Richard Wayne Snell of Stephenville, Texas. At a nearby hospital, police question Snell. The suspect confesses to shooting the state trooper. Snell tells police he has outstanding warrants in Texas and he was trying to escape arrest. As Bryant approached the car, Snell opened fire. Agents from the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation search Snell's van. They discover a metal box containing a .22 semi-automatic pistol and a grenade. They also find suspicious wires attached to the underside of the steering wheel column, leading to the air conditioner vent. They fear the van is booby-trapped. Investigators call in a bomb squad from the Oklahoma Highway Patrol. Technicians carefully examine the vehicle. After several tense moments, they conclude the van is not rigged to explode. The search of the vehicle resumes. Investigators find several more weapons, including a MAC-10 machine pistol. They also find literature printed by a group of white supremacists called the CSA, the Covenant, the Sword, and the Arm of the Lord. The group advocates the violent overthrow of the United States government. In their literature, they call for the murder of government agents and the extermination of Jews and blacks. Police call in Agent Bill Buford of the ATF. Along with other federal investigators, Buford has been trying to establish a criminal case against the CSA for nearly 2 years. Looking for evidence, Buford makes a chilling discovery.
Exactly. Fucking
in the van
exactly.
Was a briefcase.
Act like a fucking punk.
And in the briefcase was a lot of notes that this individual had put together, different maps. And one of the things that I noticed immediately was a map apparently of my house. The street it was on, the different houses that surrounded my place. And that caused me a little consternation, to say the least. It was later established that they had also been doing surveillance on a federal judge, a U.S. attorney, an FBI agent. For whatever reason, whether they just wanted to know where we lived or whether they were anticipating retaliation for some whatever, that's just left up to one's own imagination, I guess.
Buford examines the weapons retrieved from the van.
One of the things that came to my attention almost immediately was that the MAC-10 had a silencer on it.
The silencer is homemade but sophisticated. Bill Buford believes he has seen one just like it, confiscated just 3 months earlier. In early April, Missouri police caught 3 men stealing a flatbed trailer. In their possession were 3 .45 semi-automatic pistols, 1 sawed-off shotgun, and 1 MAC-10 converted to fully automatic with a homemade silencer. According to an informant, All three men are members of the CSA.
The two silencers looked exactly the same. And I felt like this might be a break if we could determine that these two silencers were made by the same people and were able to establish that they had come from the CSA compound.
5 days after the shooting, on July 5th, 1984, Trooper Lewis Bryant is laid to rest. The funeral is attended by then Governor Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, and over 1,000 police officers. Governor Clinton makes the investigation of extremist groups a priority.
To set up a group comprising members of both districts under the chairmanship of Colonel Goodwin to work on these cases.
State and federal agents probe deeper into Snell's connection to the CSA. The murder weapon in the Bryant case was a .45 caliber Colt Commander. 18 months earlier, the gun had been stolen in a deadly pawn shop holdup in Texarkana, Arkansas. The owner had been shot 3 times in the back of the head. Ballistics analysis shows a bullet recovered from the victim had been fired by a .22 caliber Ruger. The same .22 Ruger found in Snell's van. According to records, the leader of the CSA purchased that Ruger 4 years earlier. Agents now have enough evidence to subpoena the leader of the CSA to appear before a federal grand jury on gun charges. Bill Buford heads to Mountain Home, Arkansas to deliver the subpoena to the CSA leader at his 200-acre compound. Informants and surveillance indicate that the compound is heavily fortified. Several structures dot the surveillance photos. Agents know the compound is inhabited by the CSA leadership and approximately 65 men, women, and children. They know little else. ATF investigators had become aware of the CSA several years earlier. The organization had evolved from a religious group into a violent right-wing militia.
When ATF began to really think that this was more than just a Bible study group was when we were aware of the large number of right-wing organizations that were coming in and doing the paramilitary training there.
About another 150 yards up.
According to informants, extremist groups such as the Aryan Nation, the Posse Comitatus, and the Order frequently visited the compound.
They're watching us tight, so...
A few low-level members of the CSA had been arrested for firearms violations. But the leadership of the group had always managed to evade prosecution for all but misdemeanor offenses. Buford hoped today would mark the beginning of the end for this dangerous organization. Agent Buford meets a man at the front gate who identifies himself as Kerry Noble, the group's second in command.
He went into the compound, and a short time later he came back and said, well, the leader of the group will meet with you, but only you, and you have to go down unarmed, and I have to search you to make sure you haven't got a gun on you.
Buford agrees to turn his weapon over to another ATF agent. He allows himself to be searched. He knows that going into the compound alone and unarmed is dangerous, but there's no other choice.
If one of the people that was working for me or one of the agents under my supervision had wanted to do it, I wouldn't have let him do it. But at the time, it seemed like the right thing.
The stakes are too high. The group is too dangerous. Buford needs to show the CSA that federal agents will not be intimidated. In Arkansas, State Trooper Lewis Bryant is gunned down during a routine traffic stop. Investigators discover weapons connecting Bryant's killer to a group of violent white supremacists calling themselves the Covenant, the Sword, and the Arm of the Lord.
Oh, we got a grenade.
ATF agent Bill Buford enters the group's heavily fortified compound to deliver a subpoena, ordering the group's leader to appear before a federal grand jury. The ATF agent enters alone and unarmed.
It was kind of an awesome sight. At first glance, it looked like just a community there with a number of buildings. But as you looked closer, you saw that these buildings were all rock structures, very well made. If you looked closely, you could see that there were bunkers dug around the compound itself.
Buford confronts the CSA leader face to face.
I got a subpoena in my jacket.
I explained to him that I had a subpoena from a federal grand jury in Muskogee, Oklahoma, and that he would need to appear on the date on the subpoena.
The subpoena concerns weapons involved in the murder of a state trooper. Investigators have traced some of the weapons back to the CSA.
He asked if he would be arrested. I assured him that the grand jury appearance was all this was. That was not an arrest warrant, that he wouldn't be arrested.
The leader takes the subpoena. His men escort Buford out of the compound. When the CSA leader eventually appears before the grand jury, he denies knowing Richard Wayne Snell, the man who confessed to the murder of Trooper Lewis Bryant. He also claims no knowledge of how weapons traced to him ended up in Snell's possession. On November 1st, 1984, Richard Wayne Snell is found guilty of capital murder in the shooting death of State Trooper Lewis Bryant. He is sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. On the same day, Snell is charged with the murder of a pawn shop owner in Texarkana, Arkansas. In the winter of 1985, the FBI, the ATF, and the Arkansas U.S. Attorney's Office turn up the heat on the CSA. FBI Special Agent Jack Knox has developed a key informant who claims the CSA is involved in acts of domestic terrorism.
He outlined what he referred to as road trips, in which he and two other members of the CSA were assigned by the leader of the CSA to take in search of businesses or establishments to plunder, or Jewish establishments which they might attack.
According to the informant, 2 years before the murder of the Arkansas State Trooper, several CSA members had set fire to a Jewish community center in Bloomington, Indiana. The informant claimed that at about the same time, the CSA firebombed a church in Springfield, Missouri that welcomed gay members. He also claimed that 3 months later, the CSA attempted to bomb a major natural gas pipeline in Fulton, Arkansas, to disrupt supplies across the Midwest. They were unsuccessful. The pipeline was not damaged. But Assistant U.S. Attorney Steve Snyder could see a dangerous pattern emerging.
There were what appeared to be random acts of violence. After this individual talked, they no longer became random acts of violence. They became part of the plan to strike out against the United States and attempt to disrupt the activities of the United States and its citizens.
The CSA had evolved from a religious cult into a group of domestic terrorists that had declared war on the United States. In March 1985, a second informant, a former member of the CSA, provides more information about the organization. He gives details about firearms and explosives being manufactured and used by the group. He tells investigators there is a machine shop in the compound where the CSA makes grenades and silencers and illegally converts semi-automatic weapons to fully automatic. He also claims the group has obtained a powerful anti-tank rocket, commonly called a law. The FBI informant reports that the CSA is building an armored tank and that landmines have been placed around the perimeter of the compound. He also provides a laundry list of interstate offenses committed by the group, including transportation of stolen vehicles, mail fraud, and theft of government property. Based on the informant's statements, the U.S. Attorney pursues a warrant to search the CSA compound for illegal weapons and explosives. Assistant U.S. Attorney Snyder intends to use RICO, a federal racketeering statute, to prosecute the CSA. The statute enables authorities to arrest and convict leaders of criminal organizations based on a pattern of illegal activities.
The RICO statute carried a statutory maximum penalty of 20 years, as opposed to the weapons and firearms violations, which carried a lesser penalty. So it was a more severe crime.
If I can show you this bigger map,
Investigators discuss how to best serve the warrant. Bill Buford opposes a kick-in-the-door approach.
It was obvious to me that we were dealing with a very militant organization. They were not, in fact, going to just roll over. If we walked in and say, hey, we're the federal government, we're here to look at your compound, they weren't going to allow us to do that.
To reduce the risk of a violent battle, the FBI would employ the newly formed hostage rescue team to serve the warrants. The HRT was established in 1982 as a counter-terrorism unit to work both inside and outside the borders of the United States. In 1985, Special Agent Danny Colson is the commander of the HRT.
The HRT basically are assaulters. It's their job to go into a crisis point and neutralize terrorists and rescue hostages. But this was not that type of situation. These people were very well armed, they were very formidable, and we wanted to avoid a shootout.
Colson establishes a command post in nearby Branson, Missouri. The HRT is composed of 2 elite teams.
Basically, you had a sniper element and you had an operator element. The snipers were responsible for gathering intelligence to give cover to the operators, and the bulk of the team was made up of operators.
Agent Buford, who's been inside the compound, briefs Colson on the layout, the main gravel access road, the front gate, and where the property borders the shore of a man-made lake. The first phase of the operation is a reconnaissance mission.
You cannot command and control a crisis situation unless the commander's done a recon. He has to go in and see the ground. He has to know what the structures are like, where they are relative to each other, and what the best avenue of approach to get there in the shortest period of time is.
Tonight, Colson and his team will be the uninvited guests of the CSA. In Arkansas, local and federal authorities believe an extremist group is involved in domestic terrorism. They call themselves the CSA, the Covenant, the Sword, and the Arm of the Lord. The FBI's hostage rescue team prepares to enter the terrorists' heavily fortified compound.
where the compound is or anything else, last chance.
HRT Commander Danny Colson briefs the reconnaissance team before they go in. The recon team's job is to gather intelligence on the group's infrastructure, its buildings, manpower, and weapons. while avoiding the CSA's armed patrols. ATF agent Bill Buford will act as the HRT's guide. He's been inside the compound and knows the layout.
I had been doing so much work on the CSA and had spent so much time in the woods out around the compound that I had a good idea of the terrain, the fortifications on the compound, and had drawn up a raid plan myself as to what I felt should be done in order to execute this safely.
FBI Special Agent Danny Colson knows the CSA is well armed and dangerous.
These individuals had assault rifles, they had night vision capability, they had an excellent communication system, they were well trained, they practiced their tradecraft, which means marksmanship.
Still, Colson has every faith in his team.
The HRT has excellent patrolling skills, and it was just a matter of relying on our training. You move very quietly, you move very slowly, you crawl on your stomach, you stop and you listen, you look, and you rely on your senses. We would send a person on point. He would scour the area and glass it with thermal imaging gear. You listen to the noise of the forest. If something interrupts that, you know that somebody's there that's not supposed to be.
The team spots CSA guards patrolling the compound. They're armed with assault rifles.
We finally signaled it was safe, and we moved the rest of the patrol in. And we sort of leapfrogged in and out. We had a rear guard to be sure that nobody came around behind us. The thing that was concerned most about, of course, is the law rocket. You don't have to be a real good shot with a law rocket to kill a lot of people. It'll take out a light tank or a bunker, fired into my perimeter, could have killed my agents.
The recon team finally makes its way to the main compound. CSA members, as well as their families, are asleep inside some of the buildings.
The assault team leader needed to know what the structures looked like in case we had to breach them. So you have the possibility that there could be a suicide pact with these people. And they might start killing their children. That's happened before, it's happened since then. And so we had to be prepared to go in there to rush in and save innocent lives.
From the reconnaissance missions, Colson now knows exactly how the CSA compound is laid out and what needs to be done.
Well, the thing that the recon really reinforced was that we don't want to assault these guys. I mean, if we had to, we could do it, but there would be great loss of lives on their side and possible on our side.
The compound sits on over 200 acres of land. If Colson hopes to resolve this without bloodshed, he'll need a lot more men.
After we saw how expansive this facility was there, I knew 50 men could not hold that perimeter.
Colson calls for an additional 200 FBI agents from field offices across the country. He needs to sneak them into the small community without tipping off the CSA. Knowing Mountain Home, Arkansas is famous for its sports fishing, FBI agents disguise themselves as fishermen. They check into fishing camps located along the river. The plan is to use fishing boats to approach the compound at its weakest point, from the lake. As agents prepare to move on the compound, Colson briefs Special Agent Clint Van Zandt of the FBI's hostage negotiation unit.
You've got about 5 options in any type of situation. You can contain, isolate, and negotiate. You can contain and demand surrender. you can use snipers, you can use tear gas, or you can use a direct tactical assault and just overwhelm them with manpower and firepower. In these last 3, people die.
The decision is made to contain, isolate, and negotiate. Danny Coulson is the point man on all 3 phases of the operation.
This man accused himself.
I came to believe rather quickly that the leader of CSA is not going to want to negotiate with a lower-ranking FBI negotiator. He's going to want to talk to his tactical equivalent. In this case, it's going to be Danny Coulson.
And I wasn't comfortable with that. I'm a tactical person. I'd been a sniper, and I'd been a SWAT team member and a SWAT team leader and trained as an operator. And I was not trained to be a negotiator. And I didn't know that I could pull that off. I'm much more comfortable going in after the guy than trying to talk him out.
But Van Zandt convinces Coulson that he's the right man for the job.
I viewed a lot of negotiations. I mean, every time a tactical team is deployed, a negotiator is deployed with them. So I'd seen it done. And basically, Clint Van Zandt taught me some negotiation strategies and techniques.
After 10 days of reconnaissance and planning, Special Agent Danny Coulson and the FBI hostage rescue team are ready. Over 200 law enforcement agents prepare to surround one of the most dangerous and heavily armed outlaw militias in the country. In 1985, the FBI closes in on the CSA, a paramilitary organization in Arkansas. Members of the group are suspected of domestic terrorism and murder. Over 200 agents, led by the FBI's hostage rescue team, make their move. HRT snipers and operatives deploy across a lake that borders the compound. Their mission is to establish a rear perimeter. Additional HRT units fan out in the woods, flanking the main compound. The ATF, along with the Arkansas State Police and the Missouri Highway Patrol, set up roadblocks. Their job is to prevent any CSA supporters from entering or leaving the compound. Overhead, an FBI surveillance aircraft called the Night Stalker cruises at an altitude of 50,000 feet. The plane's onboard thermal imaging system monitors movement throughout the compound. FBI Special Agent Danny Coulson.
You could see everything going on the ground. We saw CSA people standing and talking to each other in little groups around the compound. We could see every animal, every deer, every coyote, rabbits running around on the ground, which gave me a tremendous advantage because I could use this vehicle, this airplane, to help me set my perimeter. They could maneuver my people around listening posts. They could maneuver my people around patrols.
Coulson directs the mission from a command and control vehicle near the front gate of the compound. Special Agent Clint Van Zandt, an FBI hostage negotiator, advises Coulson.
It was very prudent to go in at night and to have them wake up the next morning and find that we had walked literally right up to them without them knowing it. We could have come all the way in, but we didn't do it because we want to resolve this peacefully.
HRT snipers surveil the compound from positions inside and near the main gate. Within 10 minutes, they report that 2 men are exiting the compound and approaching their position.
Sniper 1 to command post. Instructions, please. Have individuals coming out of the compound gate. Stand by. Standing by for instructions.
And I radioed back and said, do they know you're there? He said, no, they haven't seen us yet.
The sniper tells Coulson that one man has an assault rifle, the other has a sidearm.
Individuals getting closer, command post. Instructions, please.
Coulson instructs his men to confront the CSA guards.
I said, you hail them You yell at them and tell them you're the FBI, tell them to go back inside.
The message it sends is that we could have got you, but we chose not to do it. Basically, we are here in force, but we come in peace.
FBI, back in the compound now! FBI, get back in the compound! Move,
I wanted to get in the habit of following my orders, or the orders of my team, and to show them that we weren't there to hurt them.
We're hearing from the tactical agents that there are lights, that there are activities within the compound.
We'll go with you. No, you better stay back here.
Moments later, another man walks out of the compound.
Who's out here?
I instructed them to let him get close, and I wanted 2 operators to take him into custody.
FBI, freeze! Don't move! Freeze!
I didn't order him back in because I wanted to start the dialogue. It's time to talk to him. Sometimes one of the most difficult things about a standoff situation is finding somebody to talk to. You don't always get them to talk to you initially.
The man identifies himself. He's Kerry Noble, the deputy commander of the CSA.
The first thing I said to him is we need to start a dialogue and talk about resolving this thing peacefully. We're not here to hurt anybody. But you're not getting out. And if you start a war, we're going to end it.
Noble says he will convey the FBI's request to talk with his commander. At daybreak, federal agents and local police have completely surrounded the compound. The news media somehow gets hold of the story and converges along access roads. Agents establish a direct telephone line into the compound. A short time later, Agent Coulson receives a call.
The operator called me over and said, it's him. And it was the leader. And essentially said the same thing that I'd said to his deputy, is that this is the FBI, my name's Danny Coulson, we have a warrant for your arrest.
The leader agrees to come out and talk on one condition: that he will not be arrested. Otherwise, his people will put up a fight. Coulson agrees to the terms.
5 minutes. See you then.
Van Zandt prepares Coulson for the meeting. As an expert in behavioral science, Van Zandt believes the CSA leader will only respond to another commander.
As a military commander, I said, you wouldn't be carrying a long gun or rifle in this type of meeting, but you'd have your 9mm pistols. You'll meet his expectation as to what our FBI tactical commander should look like. He'll be more open to dialogue, more open to negotiations.
Coulson approaches the main gate.
You should always look like you're in charge. But also, you have to bring him out. You have to get him to talk. It's not just you walk up and give demands, you get him to talk to you.
Tensions mount for a possible violent confrontation. FBI snipers train their sights on the CSA leader and his guards.
And you have to understand that this is a man who thought we were literally from the devil, that we were agents of the devil. So trying to create a bond of trust on a road with 2 armies facing each other with awesome firepower is a difficult thing to do.
Coulson tells the CSA leader that the FBI is there to confiscate grenades, assault rifles, the law, anti-tank rocket, all illegal weapons stored in the compound.
And eventually,
I really didn't describe the forces. I just said, we're here, we've been here, we know what's going on in there, and at this point I wanted to bring him the faceless enemy. What I got from him was dialogue, which is the most important thing. But what I didn't get was capitulation. He didn't agree to do anything. He just agreed that they would go back in and pray about it.
well, I respect that.
We'd agreed earlier if he came out that he could go back in. And that's very important. You have to keep that trust.
Colson and Van Zandt have no choice but to honor their agreement. They allow the leader to go back inside the compound. The first day and night of the siege passes without incident or resolution. On day 2 of the siege, the CSA commander requests another meeting. This time, he appears in full battle dress.
Changing clothing is a big deal. When the leader of CSA puts on tactical clothes, he's taking the presence of a tactical commander.
The leader of the CSA tells Colson that there are people inside the compound who are prepared to launch an assault and break out.
And my patience was wearing really thin at this time. And I said to him, who are you going to fight? You've not seen us. You don't know where we are. We are going to use deadly force on you if you come out with weapons and come onto my perimeter. Who are you going to shoot? You haven't even seen us yet. How are you going to shoot us? It's like you're fighting ghosts, and you won't even know who kills you. You need to come out of there.
Now you get in there and convince them to get out of here right now.
The leader tells Colson he is prepared to come out, but he can't control everyone in the compound.
And he said to me, I need help. He said, there's a man that's our spiritual leader, and I need his advice, and I need his help to convince people that's the thing to do to come out. And I said, who is this? He said, it's Robert Millar.
Robert Millar is a well-known figure in the secretive world of right-wing extremists. It's an unusual demand. But to Van Zandt, it's a turning point in the negotiation.
This situation was either going to be resolved by bullets or it was going to be resolved by trust. Bullets or trust, what's it going to be?
For Colson, it is the moment of truth. He knows that if the shooting starts, there is no telling when it will stop. In the mountains of Arkansas, over 200 law enforcement agents surround an armed compound. Inside are a group of violent right-wing extremists, the Covenant, the Sword, and the Arm of the Lord. The leader of the CSA demands to see Robert Millar, their spiritual leader. FBI Special Agent Danny Colson decides to use Millar to help persuade CSA members to leave the compound.
This is something totally against FBI policy, to bring in a Confederate into a crisis situation, not just to negotiate, but to go inside. And this is a huge risk. And I thought it was worth taking, given the risk that we were facing.
The FBI flies Millar in from Oklahoma. Special Agent Clint Van Zandt tries to convince Millar that it will be in the group's best interests if he helps bring the standoff to an end.
I said, you know, if you're able to do this, if you're able to resolve this peacefully, you'll be known as the peacemaker within your movement. I said, I don't say that to win you over. I say to tell you that you've got a lot riding on this. And you can see the wheels turning. It was at that moment I thought, he's flipped over on our side. He's on our side. He's going to do it. This was all the chips. We're saying, we're going to bet on this guy that he's going to drive home the message that Danny and myself and everybody else has been delivering for the last 4 days. Now, he's got to close the deal. And he called on the field phone. And Millar said, well, I'm in here talking to them, but I really haven't got anything resolved. They said, okay, you got another hour. Well, really, we couldn't control him. What were we going to do, go in and grab him by the neck and rip him out of that compound where there's 50 people with guns inside? So you had to be real careful of not, you will be out of there, because then it would have been apparent we were an empty suit. We were paper tiger, and we couldn't be perceived as that. So it had to be, well, I really need you out of there in an hour. And he called back in an hour, and he said, I need more time with these folks. I think I can do it. I've got them coming along, but I need more time. And we just reconciled ourselves that he's going to stay there the night.
On the morning of April 22nd, day 4 of the siege, Millar and the CSA leadership exit the compound. For the first time since the beginning of the standoff, there are no armed men with the CSA leader.
They came out and they said, we have an agreement that we will surrender. We will come out and we'll give up our arms and walk out peacefully.
Colson receives the news with guarded optimism.
And I said to them, that's a great decision, but I want you to understand that this better not be a ruse for an escape attempt, because you will not survive it. This better be a surrender.
Colson gives the leader 15 minutes to gather his people and bring them out.
And very shortly after, I get a communication from a sniper team that they're coming. They're coming out. The snipers report that they're in civilian attire. There's no camis. There's no battle gear. There's no weapons they can see.
The siege is over. Not a single shot has been fired.
It was an ending that we had all prayed for, and one that we were very fortunate that we had.
ATF and FBI agents carefully searched the compound, accompanied by the deputy commander of the CSA, Kerry Noble. Over the course of several days, they recover hundreds of automatic weapons, homemade hand grenades, and landmines, as well as detonator boxes and plastic explosives. Agents find a Law anti-tank rocket near the leader's house. They find 30 gallons of cyanide stored inside steel drums. Agents believe the CSA intended to use it to pollute municipal water supplies. Investigators also find a steel-plated armored car equipped with a fully automatic machine gun.
I rarely cast
At trial, the leader of the Covenant, the Sword, and the Arm of the Lord is sentenced to 20 years in prison for federal RICO violations. Kerry Noble, the CSA's deputy commander, receives a 5-year sentence for firearm violations. Today, he speaks publicly about the dangers of hate groups and destructive cults. Richard Wayne Snell, already serving a life sentence for the murder of Arkansas State Trooper Lewis Bryant, is found guilty of murdering a pawn shop owner. He is sentenced to death. On April 19, 1995, at 9:16 p.m., Snell is executed by lethal injection. Today, the CSA compound is little more than a collection of abandoned shacks and stone ruins.
If you're 45 and older and live in the United States and you still don't have life insurance, we're going to show you how easy it is to apply for up to $1 million in coverage.
These robberies, huh?
In the mid-1990s, a gang of professional bank robbers raided cities across 7 states. Disguises and speed protected their identity from cameras and the police. They stole hundreds of thousands of dollars, always leaving a bomb to terrorize their victims. With no leads and little evidence, the FBI had to find the bandits before someone got killed.
Across the Midwest, a band of armed robbers struck banks at the rate of nearly 1 per month. They attacked with lightning precision and lethal force. They were in and out in 5 minutes. I'm Jim Kallstrom, former head of the FBI's New York office. The stakes were raised when the FBI discovered the robbers had an agenda beyond personal wealth. To stop these violent extremists, the FBI need to capture their terrorist leaders.
Yep.
In 1994, the citizens of Ames, Iowa enjoyed the peaceful life provided by a small college town. Many newcomers had moved to Ames because of the area's low crime rate. On January 25th at 10:30 in the morning, 2 men entered a bank in town.
Right, this is a robbery! Everybody down on the floor! Down, down, down on the ground! Down, get on the floor!
They wore ski masks and held semi-automatic pistols. They ordered everyone to the floor. The teller managed to set off a silent alarm without being seen. The FBI office in nearby Des Moines was alerted to the robbery in progress. The agency had primary investigative jurisdiction in crimes involving federally insured money. Agents immediately responded, but they were 30 miles away from the bank. The bandits quickly emptied the cash drawers.
Don't look at me, face the ground.
One of them pulled out what appeared to be a bomb. He warned that no one should move for 5 minutes or it would explode. The employees and customers evacuated as soon as they could. The local police cordoned off the bank as explosive experts worked inside. The bomb proved to be a diversion. 2 road flares bound with duct tape.
Oh, crap.
The employees described how one of the gunmen leaped over the counter to grab the money.
Shit.
They grabbed thousands in cash and were in and out of the bank in less than 5 minutes. Agents interviewed the witnesses.
So did you guys want to add anything else?
They said the gunmen sometimes used Spanish when talking to each other. The security camera provided photographs of the robbery. Ski masks effectively hid the faces of the assailants. But investigators had images of their disguises and their weapons. 9mm semi-automatics. Because the perpetrators wore gloves, they did not leave any fingerprints. Detectives used electrostatic tape to recover a footprint from the counter. The precautions taken by the bandits had effectively obscured their identities. Special Agent Ken Moore of the Des Moines, Iowa FBI field office was immediately concerned that they were dealing with dangerous professionals.
Now, most bank robbers try to enter banks as quietly as possible, go up to one teller counter, and proceed to rob the bank, and then leave as quietly as they can. These individuals came in very violently, fast.
What would you do if you knew a heart attack was coming? Joe Barton here, and if you're over 40, check your chest for these 2 heart attack early warning signs that I'm going to show you right now in this video. I'll also
fast.
Agent Moore wanted to apprehend the suspects as quickly as he could. But the FBI had nothing of value to lead to their identity. Several weeks later, a communique came into the Des Moines office. It alerted area FBI of a February 15th bank robbery in Davenport, Iowa. Agents contacted the Davenport office to see if the incident might be related. The agent described 2 gunmen wearing ski masks and black overcoats that had invaded a Davenport bank. The thieves used the same Spanish phrases as the Des Moines bandits. They also hopped over the counter to empty the cash drawers. There was one significant difference. This time, the bandits left a real explosive, a pipe bomb instead of a fake. Fortunately, the detonator was missing. Disarming it had slowed down the investigation.
What that device does is it requires more manpower that could be out conducting an active investigation. Instead, they're at the bank making sure things are safe.
Investigators believed that the similarities between the incidents were more than coincidental.
After the Davenport bank robbery, we realized that the same individuals were responsible for both bank robberies. And this was our first connection to possible serial bank robbers.
Okay. See you later.
In the next 4 months, Cincinnati, Green Bay, and Kansas City suffered similar crimes.
There appeared to be a pattern of their robberies. There appeared to be 2 regions where they were robbing banks, the Midwest region as well as the Ohio region. We were trying to logically connect those 2 regions and why banks were being robbed that way.
The robberies occurred between 10 and 11 in the morning when banks were less populated. Each time, the bandits were out in less than 5 minutes, always leaving an inert bomb as they fled. The wide geographic spread of targets made their next moves impossible to predict.
I'll get back with you.
The FBI needed to find some evidence that would lead to the suspects. On June 8, 1994, the bandits hit a bank in Springdale, Ohio. They drove away with over $11,000. A bystander saw them use a brown Chevrolet as their getaway car. On June 17th, a security guard became suspicious of a car on his employer's lot. It had been sitting for a week without anyone claiming it. He saw a police scanner. He also spotted a pager next to a stained $20 bill. A Springdale officer came out to check the car. He began a search to ascertain the vehicle's ownership. He made an effort to force open the glove compartment. A grenade tumbled out. The hand grenade turned out to be another inert explosive, but its presence linked the car to the bank robbery. Agents used the car's serial numbers to track down the dealership where it had been sold. They talked to the salesman who had handled the deal. The sale had been made less than 2 weeks earlier, but he couldn't give a description of the buyer. The dead ends left investigators feeling the pressure.
We were becoming frustrated because the escalation of violence seemed to have been increasing. They were more brazen, were brandishing firearms, scaring bank employees. They were scaring customers, leaving behind booby traps. So we were very frustrated and we were concerned.
On December 27th, the bandits finished 1994 with their 12th robbery in as many months. They hit a bank outside St. Louis. This time, there were 4 gunmen.
Now we were concerned over possible takeovers of banks, possible entry into the bank vault. With 4 people, there's a lot more they can do.
Bystanders of the St. Louis robbery saw the bandits put on their ski masks before entering the building. The teller got a glimpse of one of them inside the bank. These witnesses helped FBI artists make composite sketches of the suspects. The FBI distributed the drawings to other agencies and the media. They hoped it might bring someone forward who might know something more. The television and news reports generated hundreds of calls into the FBI offices. Agents followed up on all credible tips, but none provided any lead value. The assailants communicated with the media as well. They sent letters and cartoons to newspapers. The correspondents ridiculed federal agents and their attempts to catch them. In one letter, the gang dubbed themselves the Midwestern Bank Bandits.
Introducing Zeba, the world's first hands-free sneaker built for comfort. You heard that correct. Zebas are hands-free, meaning you can put them on without bending over. We've simply designed a better shoe you can put on effortlessly. You've never seen a sneaker like this. Just take a look from the side. The way your foot slips right in effortlessly, and the way the back bends down and pops back up. You can take your shoe off just as easily. And these are designed to look and feel.
The gang dubbed themselves the Midwestern Bank Bandits. The bandits sent another message to authorities in one of their getaway cars. An investigator searched a vehicle used in a robbery near St. Louis. On the front seat, the gang had left a newspaper clipping about Timothy McVeigh, the Oklahoma City bomber. In less than 2 years, the bandits had hit at least 15 banks across the Midwest. By the end of August 1995, agents from 7 states and FBI headquarters gathered in Louisville, Kentucky.
If we can get a shadow or something, raise the serial number.
All the offices were now working together to identify and apprehend the suspects. All information and leads were to be channeled through a single office, then distributed to the others.
Right, we'll work on that. See if we can't raise the serial number or something off.
Special Agent Moore in Des Moines served as the point man.
The meeting also resulted in all case agents going back to their office, reviewing all files to see if there's anything they may have missed or anything of lead value that might assist us in identifying the suspects.
Supervisory Special Agent David Welker found a phone tip that came into his Cincinnati office after a June 1994 robbery. The informant had named 2 men as the leaders of the Midwestern Bank Bandits, Peter Langen and Richard Guthrie.
Well, you determined at the time that they had criminal backgrounds, that as we set out our leads, that they had been arrested in Georgia for the robbery of a Pizza Hut. And then we found also at the time that the U.S. Secret Service had looked at Langen as a result of threats made to the president.
At the arrest, police seized semi-automatic guns and grenades, weapons similar to those used by the bank bandits. The suspect served a brief prison sentence before being released. Agent Welker was able to pull their mugshots. He compared the photographs with the artist's sketches made after the St. Louis robberies.
And they were so close then that it was phenomenal. It appeared that the composite artist used these photographs to draw the composite drawings. That's how close they were.
Agents now had names for the gunmen. In pursuing them, the FBI was about to uncover a far more deadly plot than bank robbery. In 1995, the FBI hunted the Midwestern bank bandits. The day before Thanksgiving, the four gunmen struck another bank in St. Louis, their 21st robbery. Their disguise included ATF hats, the same caps worn by federal agents from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. They also left their signature pipe bomb. None of these explosive devices had gone off. They had either been inert or lacking detonators. By now, agents knew how to defuse the bombs themselves. They weren't going to let the ruse slow the investigation down anymore. Supervisory Special Agent David Welker of the Cincinnati office had names for two of the bandits. But Peter Langan and Richard Guthrie were living underground, surfacing only when they struck another bank.
Clearly, we've identified the right people. We're trying to develop as much information about these people and their contacts as possible. But the best part about it is we have leads to follow.
In the intervening months, the informant who had provided the names had moved from Ohio.
First set of robberies to tear gas canister.
Special Agent Ed Woods of the Cincinnati FBI field office tracked the informant to Georgia, where he lived with his new wife and child.
This fella had been an associate of Langan and Guthrie in the past, had removed himself from that lifestyle and was starting a new life for himself. And I think he was ready to put all that behind him. So when I interviewed him, he cooperated fully.
The informant had met Langan in 1991 at a white supremacist rally.
The Bible says, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, and if thy neighbor...
They shared similar beliefs about race and government. A year later, Langan proclaimed his intention to form the Aryan Republican Army. It was going to start a revolution against Washington and its federal agencies like the FBI and ATF.
It's your tax money.
Langan had been inspired by the Order, an established terrorist group.
If you're 45 and older and live in the United States and you still don't have life insurance, we're going to show you how easy it is to apply for up to $1 million in coverage with no physical exam and no face-to-face meeting required. Even if you have health conditions or you're a smoker, click the blue button below this video and get a risk-free quote.
Terrorist group.
You know what I'm saying? We're breaking your back. You know what I'm saying?
The Order had financed their racist agenda by robbing $4 million from banks and armored cars.
Hey, how's it going?
That evening, Langan introduced Guthrie as his compatriot.
I'll explain all about that.
2 months before the first bank robbery, they asked the informant to become a member of the Aryan Army.
Well, I've got some stuff here.
He declined to join the new gang, but he did agree to pitch in.
What we got from this cooperating witness was the scope of their activities. The surgical planning for their bank robbery activities, the fact that now we learned for the first time that their activities aren't just bank robbery and criminal matters, it relates to white supremacy.
The informant helped Langan case the bank in Springdale, Ohio. But before that June 1994 robbery, the informant had a change of heart and cut himself off from the bandits. He had participated enough to be charged as an accomplice. The FBI promised not to prosecute him if he assisted. They were ready to make a deal to capture Langan and Guthrie.
Once we determined that they had broken off other white supremacist organizations to form their own, it certainly ratcheted the investigation up just another notch.
Agent Welker suspected it was only a matter of time before the Midwestern bank bandits turned their racial prejudice into violence. The gang was back in Cincinnati, hitting another bank in December 1995.
Okay.
During their escape, one of the bandits bumped into a teenager. The gunman demanded her purse. She refused to comply. Only the sound of approaching sirens prevented the young woman from being seriously hurt. Betting that the bandits were still in the area, Agent Welker brought the informant to Cincinnati.
You know the fellows that are involved.
Upon arriving, the informant agreed to re-enter the white supremacist movement.
Make sure that he has your pager.
Agents instructed him to page the FBI when he made contact with the suspects. But investigators became frustrated when more than a week passed without any results.
Since he's been here for a week and a half and has provided no information at all, and has arranged no meeting, has virtually done nothing, I was more than skeptical as to what this cooperating witness could do for us. And I was prepared to send him home because of my disbelief at the time.
At 2:30 in the morning of January 17th, 1996, the informant paged the FBI. The call roused investigators from sleep to a secret meeting. The informant claimed to have found Guthrie. He was finishing dinner with a friend when Guthrie unexpectedly showed up.
Oh, crap. God damn it.
The informant invented a reason for being in Cincinnati and engaged the suspect in small talk. Guthrie invited him out to his van to continue the conversation in private. While they sat in the parking lot, the suspect asked his old friend to reconsider joining the gang. Guthrie showed off an assault rifle and a bag of armor-piercing bullets. The informant provided a partial license plate number and description of Guthrie's van. Agents still doubted his credibility.
So I had Agent Woods arrange to have the cooperating witness in the FBI office at 4 o'clock on Sunday afternoon. I didn't want him to know why he was there. I just wanted him to be there. And then I arranged for my division's polygraph examiner to be there, and I wanted a polygraph of him. I wanted to make sure that what he was telling us was true.
The informant agreed to take a lie detector test.
I think he's lying. Think he's lying? All over the place. Give him a chance and he didn't.
The examiner determined that the young man had been deceptive in his answers during the test.
I'm telling the truth. Listen.
The piece of paper there, this polygraph doesn't lie.
Listen,
He insisted he was telling the truth.
Make a quick phone call.
Dumbass.
Please, let me make one phone call.
1 second.
I can prove it. I can
Give
prove
you
it.
one
One
more
phone call.
chance.
Yes, come on.
Make it.
To prove it, he placed a call to the friend with whom he had had dinner.
Hey, what's going on, man?
Good, man. Yeah.
The speakerphone allowed the agents to hear everything. Without prompting, the friend immediately asked about his time with Guthrie.
So now we had to make a decision. And the decision is, do we believe the polygraph or do we believe the phone call? I think at the time, the decision we made was the right one. That is, we have to believe the phone call. It was an unprovoked response by the friend.
The informant arranged to meet Guthrie on Monday at their mutual friend's apartment. FBI agents assembled an arrest team. They staked out the location, ready to capture the suspect when he arrived. The informant waited inside the apartment. The friend did not know why the meeting had been arranged. Guthrie had promised to come sometime between 4 and 5 p.m. 5 o'clock came and went without the white supremacist arriving. The informant knew that more than his credibility was at stake. So was his cooperation agreement. If the FBI believed he had deceived them, they would turn him over to prosecutors for bank robbery.
Whoa, 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 whoa! Hold on just 1 second. I'm seeing that you're a survivalist, but you haven't built your bug-out bag yet.
At 5:20, there was still no sign of Guthrie. It looked like the suspect would not show up. Outside, the arrest team grew impatient. It was Guthrie on the phone. He said they could meet at a nearby pizza restaurant in 30 minutes.
All right, 30 minutes. Campbell, you down?
Yeah.
The informant needed to get word to the arrest team. He told his buddy he was going out for cigarettes. The informant told the agents about the call.
Yeah. The meeting's been changed a little bit. We're meeting just a little bit up the road. Everything's fine, okay?
Okay, guys.
They alerted the SWAT team to the new location. Several cars set out for the pizza parlor. The agents could not help but wonder if this was the location or just another diversion. Along the way, traffic separated the arrest team. One agent was passing a convenience store parking lot when he spotted Guthrie. He turned around and radioed to the others that the suspect had been sighted. Guthrie got into his van and started driving. The agent stayed on the van's tail, hoping the rest of the team would catch up. He was alone, following a suspect considered highly dangerous. But he was determined not to let Richard Guthrie get away. In January 1996, the FBI pursued Richard Guthrie. The suspect was wanted for 22 bank robberies. An agent separated from the arrest team had spotted the suspect at a Cincinnati parking lot and began tailing his van. He reported by radio his progress to the others.
Where are you?
Guthrie noticed that he was being followed. An informant had reported that he was armed with automatic weapons and armor-piercing bullets. The suspect tried to lose his tail. The arrest team caught up with the lone agent and joined the chase. Guthrie couldn't shake them. He unwittingly turned into a cul-de-sac. Trapped, he abandoned his van. Agent Ed Wood sprinted right behind him. He caught up to the gunman.
It was almost as if it was in slow motion where like you could almost read his mind, what he's thinking. He's thinking, I believe, is this it? Is this the last standoff of this white supremacist? And quite frankly, what I expected him to do was to turn and start firing.
Guthrie came to a riverbank. He had no escape. Agents boxed him in.
I've been in law enforcement for over 20 years, and I've never seen a look on a face like Guthrie's at the time. And Guthrie, as he was looking at us, he was deciding whether he wanted to die right then. He was deciding whether he wanted to pull a gun and take on everybody who was standing there.
The suspect chose to live. He submitted to arrest.
Catching him, it was a huge relief, and catching him to where there was no violence attached to the arrest was even a greater relief.
Introducing Ziba, the world's first hands-free sneaker built for comfort. You heard that correct. Zibas are hands-free, meaning you can put them on without bending over. We've simply designed a better shoe you can put on effortlessly. You've never seen a sneaker like this. Just take a look from the side. The way your foot slips right in effortlessly, and the way the back bends down and pops back up, you can take your shoe off just as easily. And these are designed to look and feel like any other pair of sneakers. We've simply reinvented the sneaker with the user in mind and improved it. In fact, we believe our sneakers are actually more comfortable than your typical big brand sneaker. It's not like you're sacrificing comfort for convenience. Zibas deliver both convenience with extreme comfort, and these are designed to be used anywhere. You can play sports, you can run, you can walk in these. They feel just like any other sneaker. Our goal wasn't to create an entirely new kind of footwear. We were here to improve the sneaker, and we think we've done a marvelous job. It's actually mind-boggling to us that no one has done this before. I'm sure we've all seen family, friends, relatives who just shove their foot into the back of their sneaker to get it on because they don't want to bend over. Zebras are great for anybody, but especially so if you have trouble bending over. Whether you have back pain, are pregnant, had surgery, or any illness just stopping from bending over, Zebras are perfect for you. They're perfect for anyone who simply wants a better sneaker. I'm one of the co-founders of Ziba, and I've actually been wearing my own Ziba shoes for months now, and I have over 500 miles walked, and I've never had a problem. I absolutely love my Zebas. I cannot even imagine myself wearing another pair of shoes. Wearing any other shoe now feels like washing your clothes manually when you have a washing machine right there, or even having a car with the windows you gotta roll down manually. It's just really hard for me to wear any other sneakers now that I've worn Zebas, and I think you'll feel the same way too. We really think Ziba revolutionizes the sneaker, and we're confident when you try your Zebas on, you're going to absolutely love them. And yes, technically you do have to bend down just once to tie it to your liking, and after that, you'll never have to bend down again. Just tie them once, and you can even double knot it to keep it secure, and then you'll never have to bend down again. Get your Zebas now at zebashoes.com. That's zebashoes.com.
Him to where there was no violence attached to the arrest was even a greater relief.
Once in custody, Guthrie began talking. He told investigators how he stayed in touch with the other primary suspect, Peter Langan. The friends used coded voicemails to contact one another. He handed over his pager and PIN number.
Now, how about this one right here?
He claimed his next meeting with Langan was to be in Indianapolis.
Get that?
Guthrie's lawyer made an agreement with the FBI. For later consideration in sentencing, they could take the suspect with them to use as bait. Under the arrangement, the accompanying agents weren't allowed to question Guthrie about his crimes. Agent Welker sought another way to ply information from the bandits' leader.
I assigned 2 agents to guard him. One agent is a former Harrier pilot in the Marine Corps, and the other is our principal firearms instructor. And of course, over a 2-day period, there was a lot of discussion going on. I was well aware that Guthrie had an interest in flying, and he had a keen interest in weapons.
During the trip, the agents engaged Guthrie in long conversations about common interests. The congenial strategy worked. The assailant warmed up to his accompanying agents and began volunteering information on the robberies. Guthrie admitted that he had lied to investigators. His rendezvous was really supposed to take place in Columbus, Ohio, not Indianapolis, where the investigators had taken him.
2709 control.
He gave them the address of a safe house. He told them Langdon was heavily armed. He would not come out without a fight. An FBI arrest team assembled the next morning in Columbus. Langdon's van was parked next to the duplex Guthrie had described. The plan was to wait until the suspect exited his home and got into his van. Then as he pulled out, FBI cars would box him in. This would contain him and prevent a vehicular pursuit. All escape avenues were blocked off. At 9:30 a.m., Langdon left the duplex carrying a canvas bag. Agents suspected this held an assault weapon. The face and back. After 2 years of pursuit, the leaders of the Midwestern bank bandits were now in custody. 2 other accomplices remained at large. The van was filled with semi-automatic guns, ammunition, and grenades. Inside the canvas bag, agents found a 9mm semi-automatic pistol. It was the same make of weapon that the bank bandits used. Evidence inside the duplex confirmed the bandits were more than a gang of thieves. The house contained an armory big enough to equip a small cadre of terrorists. Agents found ski masks, FBI hats, police uniforms, and false IDs from nearly every state of the Union. Books and literature detailed the gang's creed of militant hate. Investigators discovered a tape among the propaganda. It targeted young white males for recruitment into the Aryan Republican Army.
Today, we are preparing to come to the USA. Tomorrow, the world.
Please have a seat.
A Columbus bank teller had briefly glimpsed the face of one of the bandits 17 months earlier.
See anybody that you recognize?
Detectives gave her a photo lineup, hoping she could remember enough to make an ID.
This gentleman here?
Despite the intervening months, she picked out Langdon from the array of similar-looking men. While Langdon refused to cooperate, Guthrie agreed to tell all he knew. Agents debriefed him 10 hours a day for 10 straight days.
And how many accomplices did you have?
He could recall all the places, times, and dates. It took 99 pages to detail the 22 robberies.
Okay.
But when it came to his at-large accomplices, Guthrie only knew their first names. The bank bandits had been assembled like an underground terrorist cell. Personal information on others was kept to a minimum to prevent capture. Guthrie could only offer that the man he knew only as Scott was involved in music. The man he knew as Kevin was the nephew of a police
This is
officer.
Supervisor Special Agent.
Both lived in the Philadelphia area.
Yeah.
The scant information was forwarded to Pennsylvania. Special Agent Joe Hendrickson of the Philadelphia FBI field office was initially overwhelmed by the request.
There was no hope of finding these people with that information. I sat back and had a cup of coffee, and then I said, well, I'll go contact the Philadelphia Police Department. And there's a possibility that maybe their personnel records indicate nephews, but I was in much doubt that that type of record existed, because I know that in my outfit, I did not list nieces and nephews in my personnel file.
Philadelphia had 7,000 police officers, any one of which could be Kevin's uncle. The search began at the intelligence division of the police department. An officer knew immediately who the FBI was looking for. The division had been keeping tabs on white supremacists in the area. Intelligence officers had kept them under surveillance for over a year. Officers often spotted them meeting on a farm belonging to Mark Thomas.
Over the years, the Philadelphia Police Department had been taking down tags at various rallies and so forth. And at some point in time, they took down a tag, ran the tag, and it came out to Kevin McCarthy. And then they said, you know, we've got a lieutenant here that has that name. They contacted him, and lo and behold, they found out that Kevin McCarthy was attending Aryan Nation rallies.
Hendrickson put a surveillance squad on Kevin McCarthy.
Ready to start eating healthier? Meet Kachava. Kachava is the world's healthiest all-in-one meal shake. A complete meal in seconds to keep you going for hours. It's made with over 70 plant-based.
They observed him repeatedly visiting a recording studio in Philadelphia. Agents noted the license numbers of the cars outside the business. They ran the plates for all the people going in and out. One of the vehicles belonged to a man named Scott Stediford. He managed the studio and also played drums in McCarthy's band. From his amateur photo, Guthrie confirmed that this was the Scott he had worked with. Using that same photo, the witness also recognized Stediford as the getaway driver in the Des Moines robbery. An arrest warrant was sent to Philadelphia. The studio presented too many risks for officers to invade and force. Agents could not be sure who was inside and what weapons might be hidden. They didn't want another shootout.
I'm writing it for my mom, actually, and these are the lyrics I came up with.
Shit. Two undercover agents posed as father and daughter. The female agent asked Stediford about the cost of studio time. She claimed she wanted to record a song for her mother.
Can you grab your guitar?
As Stediford considered a quote, the undercover agents confirmed that he was alone and unarmed. The agents drew on him. They placed him under arrest. The FBI did not have an arrest warrant for Kevin McCarthy. They feared that he would run once he heard about Stediford's capture.
What we ended up doing was we brought his uncle, the Philadelphia police officer, with us. We felt that with his blood relative, the law enforcement presence, and the total set of circumstances, that we hoped that he would somehow be convinced that the thing to do would be to cooperate.
The uncle entered the basement bedroom. He disarmed his sleeping nephew. The agent woke the young man.
Kevin? Special Agent, FBI. Son?
He began explaining that it was in McCarthy's best interest to cooperate with the FBI.
We kind of know what went on today.
Only suspicion tied the young man to the crimes. The agent needed a confession. He showed McCarthy the 99-page admission made by Guthrie.
And when he saw this report describing every bank robbery, what they did, where they went, he realized that we had all the information. He just didn't realize that we had no evidence.
The young man was overwhelmed. He voluntarily turned over the weapon and clothing he used in the robberies. When he began to confess, his uncle stopped him and advised him to get a lawyer. With all the suspects now in custody, agents considered their investigation wrapped up. On July 3rd, 1996, Richard Guthrie pleaded guilty to 19 bank robberies. He agreed to testify against his accomplices. With his cooperation, prosecutors considered their case airtight. Nine days later, the cooperating witness hanged himself in a jail cell. The suicide devastated the government's case.
Now that created a major problem for the prosecution because since Guthrie could no longer be cross-examined, his information couldn't be used directly against Langer.
If the other bank bandits were going to be convicted, the FBI had to find someone else who could corroborate Guthrie's confession. In 1996, the legal case against the Midwestern bank bandits was on the verge of collapse. The chief cooperating witness had killed himself. Without his testimony, the evidence against his captured co-defendants was slim. Special Agent Joe Hendrickson spearheaded the investigation in Philadelphia.
These bank robbers were very, very good, and the evidence that they left behind at every robbery was zero. They were fully masked, fully gloved. Their weapons were untraceable.
Hendrickson helped convince Kevin McCarthy to plead guilty and turn state's witness. But prosecutors needed more than one cooperating felon to convict the others. Investigators focused on the man who had steered suspects into the Aryan Republican Army. Mark Thomas had turned Scott Stediford and Kevin McCarthy into outlaws. Thomas edited a newsletter and webpage for white supremacists. His literature and videos had swayed many young men into racist and anti-government organizations.
And we felt that even though he was not personally involved in these crimes, that he had caused these crimes to come about. And therefore he was responsible. And based on conspiracy laws, we felt that it was quite possible to go after him for conspiring to commit bank robbery.
The FBI made weekly contact with Thomas at his Pennsylvania farm. They wanted to know about his activities, but more importantly, they wanted to keep pressure on him.
I've had about enough of you guys coming over and checking out.
They made it clear that they suspected him and weren't going away.
I can't understand why more people haven't been told these facts about life insurance. It's well known that life insurance is designed to pay tax-free cash to your loved
Cool.
Kevin McCarthy told investigators that he and Scott Stediford had stayed at Thomas's home. He acted like a father figure to them and warned them of the coming race war. He brought the young men to live in Elohim City, a white separatist compound in Oklahoma. During the summer of 1994, Thomas invited them to join the Aryan Republican Army. In mid-October, Scott Stediford agreed. He participated in his first bank robbery 2 weeks later. On November 13th, Thomas drove Kevin McCarthy to Arkansas for an introduction to Langan and Guthrie. Thomas pleaded not guilty at his arraignment hearing on February 4th, 1997.
No comment.
He asked to meet with the FBI the next day. That's where Mark Thomas caved. He signed a 7-page plea agreement that corroborated Kevin McCarthy's confession. The government's case was now solid.
This was the biggest surprise of anyone's involved in the case. The idea that the head of the movement, after one day in prison, would decide to completely cooperate was just unfathomable. But apparently our pressure over the 6 months of continually talking to him, and then the one night in prison, was enough for him to decide that he had been completely wrong in his ideals, and that he wanted to, as he said, get right with God.
Mark Thomas was sentenced to 9.5 years in prison. Peter Langan was convicted on bank robbery and gun charges. He received life without parole. Kevin McCarthy got 5 years. His testimony helped convict Scott Stediford on 2 counts of armed bank robbery. The court sentenced Stediford to 29.5 years. In America, extremist groups enjoy the freedom to maintain their beliefs. They are constitutionally protected until they cross the legal line. If they engage in outlaw activities, they will find the FBI on a mission to stop them. Two thieves develop a terrifying pattern, combining bank robberies with home invasions and taking families of bank executives hostage. For years, federal agents track them, always one step behind. Even when they're caught, the robbers do not quit. An ingenious escape sends the fugitives on another crime spree, with the FBI once again on their trail.
Introducing Zeba, the world's first hands-free sneaker built for comfort. You heard that correct. Zebas are hands-free, meaning you can put them on without bending over. We've simply designed a better shoe you can put on effortlessly. You've never seen a sneaker like this. Just take a look from the side. The way your foot slips right in effortlessly, and the way the back bends down and pops back up, you can take your shoe off just as easily. And these are designed to look and feel like any other pair of sneakers. We've simply reinvented the sneaker with the user in mind and improved it. In fact, we believe our sneakers are actually more comfortable than your typical big brand sneaker. It's not like you're sacrificing comfort for convenience. Zebas deliver both convenience with extreme comfort, and these are designed to be used anywhere. You can play sports, you can run, you can walk in these. They feel just like any other sneaker. Our goal wasn't to create an entirely new kind of footwear. We were here to improve the sneaker, and we think we've done a marvelous job. It's actually mind-boggling to us that no one has done this before. I'm sure we've all seen family, friends, relatives who just shove their foot into the back of their sneaker to get it on because they don't want to bend over. Zebras are great for anybody, but especially so if you have trouble bending over. Whether you have back pain, are pregnant, had surgery, or any illness is stopping you from bending over, Zebras are perfect for you. They're perfect for anyone who simply wants a better sneaker. I'm one of the co-founders of Zeba, and I've actually been wearing my own Zeba shoes for months now, and I have over 500 miles walked, and I've never had a...
Too often, convicted felons learn new techniques and find new partners in prison. In 1982, a group of former inmates began a spree of kidnapping and robbery. I'm Jim Kallstrom, former head of the FBI's New York office. For years, the suspects used false names and a network of criminal contacts to elude capture. To find them, the FBI had to pierce their tight-knit circle and find new partners of their own.
On December 28, 1982, Oklahoma City Bank Vice President Steve Thompson and his wife Ellen arrived home from a holiday party. Unexpectedly, a car pulled in behind them.
When they got out of the car and started entering our garage, they hollered, "Mr. Thompson, we're federal agents." They were on top of us, with just in a few seconds.
Ellen Thompson thought perhaps the men had the wrong house.
I couldn't think of any reason federal agents would be coming to our house, and I've heard of mistakes before, so I looked at him and said, "There must be some mistake here. Can I see your identification?" And he pulls out a gun.
The one with the obvious wig seemed to be the enforcer. The other one was in charge.
There was obviously one other male involved because somebody drove him to our house and that car left and we never saw that car again.
The two gunmen forced the couple inside. The leader began interrogating Thompson about the bank where he worked.
No.
He cooperated so the incident could end without anyone getting hurt. Thompson answered some questions about the bank's complex security system, but he knew the safety of his employees came first.
I didn't give him names of actual people that had combinations and stuff. I said, we'll just have to wait and see who gets there and who has the combinations and stuff, because I didn't want to put any individuals in jeopardy.
I see.
Hello.
A man called to speak with the gunman.
Yeah. Whoopsies. Uh-huh.
It sounded like they were finalizing plans for a robbery the next day.
Well, call me back at 6:30.
The leader warned Thompson to follow his orders exactly.
Okay.
He was trying to make a point with me, and he said, if anybody sets off the alarms tomorrow, if anything goes wrong and the police come, he said, I'm going to kill the police.
Tell me.
He made the comment at that point. He said, I'm not going back to the penitentiary.
The gunman held the couple hostage overnight. An hour before dawn, they forced the Thompsons to drive them to the bank.
Woman?
At 9 a.m., they waited for employees to arrive.
She's wearing a black dress, floral print.
They had someone stationed outside as a lookout.
She's coming in the front door.
During the robbery, one person was in contact with somebody by phone the whole time.
He lost two. Oh, maybe not.
And they were able to give him detail as far as how many people were coming to the front door.
The gunman knew only certain employees had access to the multi-layered security system.
We had our business this morning, but if everybody cooperates, we'll be okay.
Ma'am, I need to know, do you have the combination to the safe?
No.
I need you to come with me.
Those without codes or combinations were shoved into a bathroom holding area.
What's going on?
Blonde, tall, act natural, everything will be fine.
It always takes, more than one person to access anything. You have different layers of security within the vault and the cash vaults themselves within the vaults.
Sir, I need to know, do you have the combination to the safe?
It's okay. Yes, I do.
I need you to come with me.
Anyone with a code was put to work.
So that's what he was trying to determine, was who was going to be able to access that cash.
Other employees had gotten them close. One final combination stood between the robbers and hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Get it open. Don't play hero. Be stupid.
The robber with the wig was the more threatening one.
Do what you're told, no one gets hurt. Good, now get in there and fill them up.
Are you still wearing enough layers to insulate Alaska? That's why you need the new and improved bearskin hoodie. The 6-pocket polar fleece tactical hoodie that blocks wind and regulates heat for incredible comfort, wherever you are. That's why we designed the bearskin hoodie with improved wind insulation technology on the waist, arms, and hood. Plus, an extended storm flap that runs the length of the front zip. Block wind double time. Finally, a functional hoodie you can actually take outside. You're seeing this video because we want to offer you 60% off your bearskin hoodie today with free delivery. And you might not see this video again, so head over to stopbadhoodies.com.
Within 30 minutes, the gunman had hundreds of thousands of dollars in hand.
Did you get it? Got it. Come on. I need your keys.
They herded Mr. Thompson, the manager, in with the other hostages.
He put me in one of the restrooms, and he told me and the people in our restroom that said, we're going to be here 5 more minutes. Nobody stick their head out. And they left, and I was pretty sure that, from hearing the conversations out there, that they were going to leave right away. So I probably waited, probably a minute and a half before I came out.
When it appeared the robbers had gone, Thompson directed the manager to contact authorities.
Go ahead and call the police.
Yes, Quail Creek Bank's just been robbed. We need the police here right away.
The call went out to nearby Oklahoma City patrol units.
Respond immediately to bank robbery at 1482 Olson Road.
Following standard procedure, Oklahoma City police also contacted the FBI. Special Agent Mike Simon took the call.
Lock it up, buddy. I shouted to other agents on the squad that we had a bank robbery. I gave them the location and gave them a little bit of information about what was going on, the fact that the robbers were gone, and we had a bunch of agents in head for the bank.
The patrol units arrived first. They approached quietly and cleared the bank, making sure no gunmen were still inside. FBI agents arrived minutes later. The Hobbs Act, enacted in 1946 to protect federally insured depositors, makes bank robberies the jurisdiction of the FBI. It meant a nationwide police force would investigate the crime and go after the robbers. The Thompsons described the ordeal that began in their home the day before.
So no one was hurt. Didn't have anybody hurt.
It had been a sophisticated, well-planned crime, with no evidence left behind. These robbers must have struck before. but no similar robberies had occurred in the area in the past. Agents searched the FBI's database to see if any had been committed elsewhere. They found a national file of robbery cases that included invasions of bank employees' homes.
So I pulled that file out and found that there were several offices that had robberies where the pattern was very similar. So I started communicating with those offices.
He hoped to find an agent who had experience with whoever robbed the Oklahoma City bank. And located Special Agent Steve Chenoweth at the Phoenix FBI.
Hey, listen.
Cycle described the Oklahoma City home invasion-style bank robbery, the robbers' disguises and their mannerisms.
How many guys?
Chenoweth immediately named two bank robbers he knew, Terry Connor and Joseph Doherty, as having operated that way.
All those things are typical of what they had done in the past. And so a lot of that, once I learned the actual details of what had occurred in Oklahoma City, just pointed a finger right at those two.
Witness descriptions from Oklahoma City matched the felons. Because of his knowledge of the pair, Chenoweth became the lead case agent. He knew that Connor and Doherty had met in federal prison. Terry Connor was the leader, in for 3 Arizona bank robberies. Each time, he and his partner had held bank employees hostage overnight.
Joe Doherty was just a thug from Philadelphia, and was a stick-up guy, one-on-one, you know, gun in the right hand, maybe a note in the other hand, and, you know, give me what you got across the counter. Not a very sophisticated MO at all, and certainly didn't have the smarts that Terry Connor had.
Connor was a smooth talker, recruiting accomplices with ease.
Terry was, you know, primarily a West Coast guy, and Terry, being from the West Coast and being from California, we did certainly concentrate our efforts out there in California looking for him.
Agents contacted the Monterey, California FBI resident agency. They told Special Agent Harlan Freimeyer what they knew about Terry Connor.
Oklahoma City went on to tell us that the suspicion was that he had a girlfriend that lived in Pacific Grove, California, and they wondered if he might not be heading that direction and asked us to do some work to see if we could work that angle.
They located Connor's girlfriend's home. Routine surveillance revealed a possible link to Terry Connor, who was last believed to be in Oklahoma City.
What would you do if you knew a heart attack was coming? Now, you're smart.
Oklahoma City.
While doing a spot check on this residence, lo and behold, there was a vehicle parked out front with Oklahoma license plates on it. So I notified the Oklahoma City office, and they didn't actually have a record of that vehicle that they could positively tie into Terry Connor at the time, but they thought it might have been one that he purchased under an alias.
I'll tell you what, you ever seen...
While the girlfriend was away from the house, agents spoke with her gardener. Identifying themselves, they told him they were conducting a federal investigation. He needed to be truthful and discreet. They asked if he had recently seen any men at the residence. He hadn't, but recalled overhearing the girlfriend talking about meeting Connor the following week.
The information I got was specific enough that we knew that on a given day, Terry Connor was going to meet somewhere with his girlfriend, and so I felt at that point in time that we were very close to Terry Connor.
Agents followed Connor's girlfriend for days, learning that she drove several different cars. They placed tracking devices on each of them. With receivers in FBI cars and airplanes, they tracked her whenever she drove. But on the day she was to meet Connor, the signal faded.
Once we lost the vehicle, we were spreading our vehicles out in all sorts of directions trying to locate the signal. And we had an airplane assisting us that day, and the airplane gave us the signal out on the highway, and we picked her up again.
Agents traveled toward the location of the recaptured signal. When they spotted the car, it was parked in front of a restaurant.
There was no sign of the girlfriend or Terry Connor or anybody else that was associated with the car, so we made a plan right then to establish full-time coverage on the car until something happened.
Roger, stand down. Alright, good, just don't stand down, Mike, stand down.
The SWAT team waited, watching for any sign of the suspect. An FBI agent made sure that if the couple returned for the car, they couldn't drive it away.
We let the air out of the tires so they wouldn't sneak in and sneak out real fast, and waited.
Most stakeouts mean long hours with no payoff. But the agents had to stick with it and hope that suspected bank robber Terry Connor would surface. After a hostage-taking and bank robbery in Oklahoma City, the FBI developed two suspects, Terry Connor and Joseph Doherty. 2 months later, and 1,500 miles away in Atascadero, California, agents staked out a restaurant where Connor's girlfriend had left her car.
I fucking lost.
They believed Connor was in the area, planning to meet her. The long hours of the stakeout paid off for FBI Special Agent Harlan Freimeyer.
Shit. What happened to my night?
We just happened to see Terry Connor drive into the parking lot with his girlfriend.
Oh my God,
it doesn't usually work
dumb.
this way, but the photographs we had of Terry Connor were of such quality that it was easy to make instant recognition, so we knew that we were about to accomplish our mission.
Yeah, he would have had to have kitty corner near the pond, and then I'd be stuck.
The suspect was known to carry weapons, so a tactical arrest team took the lead.
Interesting. Oh yeah, Twitch is closed. Ain't that about a bitch?
They struck fast, giving Terry Connor no opportunity to flee.
Sorry, Twitch.
The girlfriend was questioned and released after investigators determined she was not involved in Connor's crimes. Agents then discovered an unexpected benefit to deflating the tire of the girlfriend's car.
By the time we got to the point where we were making our arrest, he had already popped the trunk on his car. And of course, without a search warrant, we couldn't have gotten in there if he hadn't popped it for us. And so once the arrest was made, there we had in plain view the contents of his trunk, and that was useful to us because there was a briefcase that we opened and found a substantial amount of money.
Nearly $40,000 in cash or serial numbers, matching some of the money stolen during the Oklahoma City robbery. Agents also found a large diamond and a jeweler's receipt for 6 more. Authorities took Connor to the Monterey FBI office, where they charged him with the Oklahoma City robbery. In handing over his personal effects during the intake process, something of interest emerged. A sales receipt from a Reno, Nevada car dealership. The buyer was listed as Russell Anderson, perhaps an unknown alias of Connor or Doherty. He had given an address in Santa Maria, California.
My instinctive belief was that that address might well be the address of his partner Doherty. So we put out the word as fast as we could to our counterparts Southern California, asking them to get out and check that address.
The SWAT team immediately went to the residence and prepared to make entry. They suspected Doherty was inside, perhaps armed.
I trust you have my money, Mr. Mr. Brown suggested.
They suspected Doherty was inside, perhaps armed. The flashbang grenade was designed to stun anyone in the house.
By the time they got there, whoever had been occupying that address was gone. I fear that possibly they were alerted by Terry Conner in the book-in process when he was given his phone call.
Word that Conner was arrested, but that Doherty was not, went out to case agent Steve Chenoweth.
Even though we're looking for two, we're certainly willing to take one. And the fact that we didn't find Joe there was a little disappointing, but also the fact that we did find Terry Conner meant that we had solved half of that equation, and we just had to up the ante to find Joe.
Chenoweth knew Joe Doherty would keep robbing banks using the method taught him by Conner. But without Terry Conner controlling him, Doherty was a loose cannon, now more dangerous than ever.
Terry was the brains. Terry was the guy that made most of the decisions. And now you're putting Joe, who is more prone to violence than Terry was, basically in a leadership role. If he should fly off the handle, there might not be anybody there to calm him down.
For 8 months, there was no sign of Doherty anywhere. Then, in Phoenix, on the night before the busiest shopping day of the year, when banks are stocked up with cash, the vice president of a large area bank returned home with his family from a Thanksgiving dinner with relatives.
What happened?
It appeared their home had been burglarized. But the intruders hadn't left. Through the night, the two robbers held the banker and his family hostage.
Want to rob the bank?
It looked like Joe Doherty was leading a new partner. And now that he was in charge,
Do you understand?
anything could happen.
Settle in and be friends.
Thanksgiving, 1983.
They're told no one gets hurt. Give me the keys.
Two intruders held a Phoenix banker and his family hostage overnight.
Go start the car.
Hours before dawn, Joe Doherty and his new partner were ready to rob the bank. They would use the banker's car for transportation, and his children for collateral.
In the car.
Doherty never put down his weapon.
Remember, I've got the gun on your wife. Get in the car.
In less than 2 hours, they would drive to the bank, empty its vault, and escape with $270,000 cash, leaving the family frightened but unharmed.
What's the address?
The heist was in the home city of the lead case agent on Doherty's trail.
Okay, put it out to all
When
agents.
Steve Chenoweth learned of the crime, he believed he knew who had done it.
Thanks. My first thought right away is Joe Doherty, but didn't know the answer to that until I started talking to the victims to get an actual physical description.
Wondering if Doherty was taunting him by striking in his own town, Chenoweth headed to the banker's home to learn more details of a fearful night spent held at gunpoint.
Most of us don't go through that. And to go through it for an entire evening with your two children is a very scary thing. And so they were glad it was over, and they were certainly glad to see us come.
Jack, can you tell me just a little bit more about...
The banker described the assailants, saying both wore obvious wigs, and the bigger one was in charge.
Once I got the information, the physical description of the leader fit that of Joe Doherty right to a T. So I knew that we were dealing with Joe, but here again, we had another individual that he had picked up, and we didn't know who that guy was as his partner.
Yeah, I just did that.
The family described how the pair had acted. Doherty and his new partner were more volatile and threatening than he and Connor had been. But as before, they left agents with no leads. 6 months later, and 900 miles to the northwest in Reno, Nevada, local police called the FBI to another robbed bank. Once again, the heist was preceded by a hostage-taking the night before. But this time, the level of violence had increased. Now, there was a bomb.
They'd strapped it around the bank officer, indicating that it was explosives. And if he didn't do what he was told to do, that they would detonate that. And that certainly is enough to put the fear of God into you. And I would certainly do anything that they asked me to do.
Are you still wearing enough layers to insulate Alaska? That's why you need the new and improved bearskin hoodie. The 6-pocket polar fleece tactical hoodie that blocks wind and regulates heat for incredible comfort wherever you are. That's why we designed the bearskin hoodie with improved wind insulation technology on the waist, arms, and hood. Plus, an extended...
I want to stay with you. I might ride outside, Bob.
Determining there were no booby traps, a Reno police bomb specialist freed the terrified bank officer and sent him out of the vault to safety. The expert cut off the power supply, though he later determined the device was a fake. The bank officer told the FBI that he and his family had been held hostage at gunpoint overnight by 2 men wearing wigs and business suits.
Recognize the gentleman in this picture right here?
Shown a photo of Joseph Doherty, he said it looked like one of the men. Witnesses had seen a white sedan with Washington state plates speeding away from the bank after the robbery, so agents searched the area. They found the vehicle abandoned less than 200 yards from the Reno FBI office. It seemed Doherty was again boldly challenging the FBI. A check of the plates showed it was registered to a man in Spokane, Washington. That man said he had recently sold the car to someone who fit the description of Doherty and a pregnant woman whom the FBI believed to be Doherty's girlfriend. To help find the couple, the FBI called on the U.S. Marshals, experts in the interstate tracking of cars and people. United States Marshal Denny Barron believed the cars Doherty used would be the key to finding him.
As fugitives, Joseph Doherty was very smart. He changed cars like some people change socks. He would buy cars, sell them back to the original owners, sell them to a used car lot.
Marshals painstakingly followed a complex trail of cars and aliases, and eventually got a break. They discovered a car accident report linking one of Doherty's aliases to an address in Idaho. Since the house appeared to be abandoned, the marshals interviewed neighbors. One woman immediately recognized the robber, though she only knew him by his alias. She said he had the peculiar habit of shooting pistols in his backyard.
And about a week ago, though, they packed up and moved
She
away.
told the marshals that he, his girlfriend, and their newborn child had recently moved out.
Okay, go ahead.
Securing a subpoena for moving truck rental records in the area.
Okay.
Marshals determined Doherty's girlfriend had rented one under a false name and had driven it to Colorado. The rental company gave authorities her destination. A house in the mountains outside Denver. FBI agents and U.S. Marshals watched from the cover of the woods surrounding the house. Because there was now a baby involved, they had to be especially cautious. At one point, they observed the girlfriend leaving the house with another man. It wasn't Doherty. Marshals could not see if they had the infant with them. Other marshals followed the two into town and watched them enter a store without the baby.
I said, go to the car that's parked in the shopping mall parking lot and look inside and see if they left the baby inside the car.
It's a negative on the kid in the car.
And they radioed back to me, no, the baby's not in the car. And they didn't have the baby in arms. That means one thing, the baby's still at the house.
Still at the house with Joseph Doherty. After 2 years of constantly being minutes too late, authorities believed they were finally going to arrest the dangerous robber. But in law enforcement, things rarely happen exactly as planned. 2 years after Terry Connor and Joseph Doherty robbed an Oklahoma City bank, Connor had been captured, convicted of armed bank robbery, and sentenced to 25 years. The FBI believed his partner, Joseph Doherty, had continued. But it didn't look like Doherty was firing at the agents. The SWAT team had to keep cool.
Hey, hunker down. If you're not in danger, don't return fire. Don't return fire unless you're being threatened.
The marshals recalled the neighbor in Idaho who had said Doherty often fired random shots in his backyard. They believed he didn't know they were there.
Okay, just hold your fire. Hold your fire. Let me know if he comes back out again. We're going to try him on the phone.
They still needed to resolve the situation peacefully. An FBI negotiator placed a call to the house.
This is the FBI. We have you surrounded.
The negotiator said, I established contact, but the person is hung up. It was answered by a male, but he hung up.
Got it?
The well-trained snipers had several possible shots at the fugitive, but they held off.
We had to consider, of course, the safety of the baby. We had to consider the safety of other people that might be in the home that we didn't know about.
They've seen him go past the window several times.
We see the baby.
Has anybody caught sight of the child? Anybody seen the child?
Still, they had to be ready if Doherty started firing at them.
So again, try to get him on the phone. Stand by, be ready.
The negotiator called the house again.
To get her, come out of the house.
He told the fugitive that his girlfriend and accomplice had already been arrested,
Come out of the house.
and asked Doherty to consider his child's safety and surrender peacefully.
All right, guys, he hung up. Let's move in. Move to the front now.
6 minutes. So it's a kid.
through the window, they saw him approaching the door.
Back up on my command! Back up now! Back up! Come on! Hands up! Come on! On the ground! Now! All the way! Flat down! Arms out! All the way down! Copy!
He was arrested without a struggle.
Once we had the baby out of the house, we had the house secured, then we began to move through it. And we discovered 16 firearms in that house, including a .308 tactical assault rifle, 2 of those. All hidden, all loaded, all charged and ready to go to defend that house.
Doherty was charged and held for trial in Oklahoma. Almost a year and a half later, on June 19, 1985, 2 U.S. Marshals were transporting Terry Connor and Joseph Doherty to an Oklahoma City courthouse. Doherty was facing the first of 4 trials, this one for the bank robbery and hostage-taking in Oklahoma City 3 years earlier. He had subpoenaed his partner, Terry Connor, as a witness. On a rural road, they made their move. With smuggled jailhouse contraband, a handcuff key and a razor blade.
Interesting.
They had never planned on arriving at the courthouse. They took the Marshals' guns and ordered them off the road. They marched the lawmen into the woods. The felons were desperate for freedom, and it seemed no one could stop them from gaining it. June 19th, 1985. Bank robbers Terry Connor and Joseph Doherty escaped the custody of 2 U.S. Marshals while in transit to Doherty's trial. The fugitives handcuffed the Marshals to a tree and stole their weapons, badges, and car. They were mobile, armed, and for now, no one knew they were back on the run.
Oh, fucking pawn, god damn it.
They had a 15-minute head start before the Marshals managed to free themselves and report the escape.
Clearly blew that.
At the U.S. courthouse in Oklahoma City, Special Agent Steve Chenoweth was shocked when he heard the news.
My initial thought was, this can't happen. When you put so much time and effort into a case like this over a period of years, and to have it just kind of disappear in a flash, in a moment's notice, it's a real severe letdown.
How to store and sort all your photos and videos in seconds. No computer knowledge required. This little device is the best solution that finds, sorts, and backs up all your photos.
Moment's notice. It's a real severe letdown.
Bank surveillance videos captured Connor and Doherty's next crimes. 2 small-scale bank robberies in St. Louis. Agents believed they needed some quick cash before getting back to their regular routine.
Initially, after the escape and after the fact that they had held up both banks there in St. Louis and had about $30,000 cash, we knew that they were going to be coming back out and striking again at a bank at a bank officer and his family. We knew that there was a high potential for kidnapping. We knew that the propensity for violence was great.
2 months later, police in West Allis, Wisconsin, received a bank robbery call.
This is Sherry. How may I help you? You're at what bank? And the address, please?
$500,000 was taken, the largest bank heist in the state's history.
Station to Squad 113. You're responding to a bank robbery, 10707 West National Avenue.
It was by now an all too familiar pattern. 2 gunmen had held the bank president and his wife hostage, then, again aided by a lookout, robbed the bank. Fingerprints placed Connor and Doherty at the scene. Local police called the Wisconsin FBI. Special Agent Dan Kraft was assigned the case. Reading witness statements, he saw that the fugitives were bolder than ever, no longer even using disguises.
They did nothing to conceal their identity. They didn't do anything to really help by saying their names, but Terry Conner did mention to the bank president's wife, he said, the FBI is going to know who we are.
Because of the continuing danger Connor and Doherty posed, both were placed on the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitives list. Media coverage drew many leads. One call led agents to a man who might have been the robber's lookout outside the Wisconsin bank. Agents issued an APB for the alleged lookout's car. Days later, a state trooper pulled him over and called the FBI. Once they identified him, they took him in.
There was an active open warrant for him out of St. Louis for violating his federal parole. So we arrested him and brought him downtown to the FBI office.
At first, the man refused to answer questions about Connor and Doherty.
So we would talk, and this went on for 5 days. But it wasn't a sweating. I mean, you see on television where it looks like an interrogation and you're getting in somebody's face. No, it was just 2 men talking.
Finally, Kraft won him over. But he was afraid of facing Connor and Doherty in court.
I'd like to cooperate, he says, but, I won't testify. So you don't have to testify. We don't need your testimony. We've got these guys locked in. I just need to know how they think. I need to know what they do and how they do it so I can get 1 step ahead of them.
The suspect agreed to talk in the hopes of a reduced sentence. He told Kraft how Connor and Doherty chose the banks they robbed, how they traveled, even how they communicated through hotel front desks.
One of them would call up and make a reservation in the name of a former prison warden. And the other one would call up and ask if this person had checked in yet. And the switchboard operator would then say, no, Mr. So-and-so hadn't checked in yet. And they'd say, well, can I leave a message for him? So then the other one would then call back looking for messages. And they did this as one of their ways of communicating without ever being traced.
The most important piece of information he gave was the name of another man who had helped Connor and Doherty rob banks in the past. His name was John Harris. Agents found Harris in Tucson, Arizona. Surveilling him, they saw him making and receiving calls at a certain payphone. Getting a warrant, they tapped the phone and listened in. He was talking to Connor and Doherty.
We hoped through a series of wiretaps that we might be able to trace the phone back to a particular area, and through investigation in that area, maybe locate them.
Agents learned the fugitives were calling from Chicago and were planning another robbery there. Special Agent George Spinelli of the FBI Chicago field office distributed photos of the fugitives to area hotels. One reported a guest who looked like Joseph Dougherty, though that name wasn't on the register.
As I looked at the register, I looked down and I did see an alias that Connor had used in the past. At that point, I thought possibly we had 2 top 10 fugitives at this hotel.
Case agent Steve Chenoweth immediately flew to Chicago, joining the other agents at the hotel. The guest who looked like Dougherty appeared to have checked out.
No vehicles yet either.
Agents watched the room Connor might be in. If he was there, they needed to confront him outside his room to avoid a standoff.
We were very concerned that it could get violent, and especially Connor, who had vowed that he would never be taken alive. We took extra precautions at that point.
An arrest team planned the takedown for the parking lot.
Okay. All right, keep an eye. Okay, sounds good.
Eventually, the FBI agents spotted someone leaving the room.
Are you still wearing enough layers to insulate Alaska? That's why you need the new and improved bearskin hoodie.
Spotted someone leaving the room.
I think I might have something here. Come here, take a look. Yeah, I've got some activity.
Can't see his face yet.
It was
That's
Connor.
him, George. That's Connor.
He was alone.
Positive ID.
Tony, it's our guy. Take him. Take him now.
Agents called for the SWAT team to make the arrest.
So he did not have an opportunity to get away. He was grabbed immediately.
Although Joe Dougherty was not seen by agents, it appeared he was nearby and saw the police activity.
A call came in to the switchboard asking what was going on. And it was a male, and asking about the occupant maybe of a particular room. And no doubt in my mind it was Dougherty, and he was trying to find out what happened.
Agents searched the area, but did not find Dougherty. The one thing they knew was that he would commit more robberies with a new partner.
This guy doesn't have any other choice. He can't do a robbery by himself. He's got to reach out for somebody else.
The FBI believed he'd call on John Harris, and learned Harris had recently flown to San Francisco. Again, they spotted Harris repeatedly using a certain payphone. They ordered another phone tap.
About a week later, we get a phone call, and it was Joe Dougherty.
Dougherty said he was calling from St. Louis. But FBI technicians couldn't trace the call out of San Francisco.
And all of a sudden, the stark realization came to us that this guy's not in St. Louis. Dougherty is right there in that area.
Agents realized he himself was surveilling his lookout to see if he had been followed.
So what's the plan?
They hoped he hadn't seen the undercover agents. Believing his lookout was in the clear, Dougherty planned a meeting for the next morning, there in San Francisco. Agents showed up early. Dougherty arrived as promised.
And at about that time, we had a whole lot of very weary FBI agents pounce on Joseph William Dougherty. And so ends the saga, and so ended the chase.
After a nationwide manhunt that lasted more than a year, Terry Connor and Joseph Dougherty were tried for their most recent crimes. They each received 2 life sentences, plus 139 years without parole. They are kept in separate federal prisons. Their partnership forever terminated.